Okay, so I found a new way that we can rotate images that I think will really help you all visualize what's going on and understand what's happening, okay? So we are going to go over this a little bit on Tuesday, the next time I see you, but I wanted you to have this for your homework and so that you could ask questions on Tuesday, okay? So the first thing I have right here is an L. It's a backwards L, but I thought it would be the best shape to show you because you can see how it rotates. So here are all the coordinates for the pre-image, just A, B, C, D, E, and F. It's a lot of points, but I wanted it to be a shape that you would see the changes throughout. So the first thing that I'm going to do is rotate it 90 degrees clockwise, okay? So because I'm going to clockwise and I'm going 90 degrees, I'm going to rotate it one time. So I'm turning my paper to the right one time. So again, I'm turning my paper to the right one time. Now, notice that the numbers are all wonky. They're crazy looking. So we're not going to look at them. They're sideways. They don't really matter anymore. All we are going to do is look at the point and compare it to its position to 0. Okay? So here at A, from 0, it went over 1. We know that if we go to the right, it's positive, right? When we move to the right, it's positive. So that means it went over 1. Okay, so over here, I'm going to write 1. And it went down 1. And we know if we go down on a graph, it would be negative 1. It would be negative 1. So we're pretending that there's a normal coordinate plane here. So then let's look at B. Let's look at B. Over 2, over to the right, so it's positive, and down 1, so negative 1. Okay, so now C. Over 2, down 2, so 2, negative 2. D. Over 4, down 2, so negative 2. E. Over 4, down 3. And then F. Over 1, down 3. Okay, so now I'm going to turn my paper back so that it's normal. And I'm going to graph these points. So 1, negative 1. That's going to be my A prime. 2, negative 1. That's going to be my B prime. C prime is at 2, negative 2. D prime is at 4, negative 2. E prime is at 4, negative 3. And F prime is at 1, negative 3. So now you can see I have the same shape, but all it did was rotate 90 degrees clockwise. It rotated 90 degrees clockwise. Okay? So if I look at my pre-image and the coordinates of my pre-image, what do we notice? A and A prime. Both 1, except for this one's negative. My Y value is now negative. Let's look at B. It was 1, 2. Now it's 2, negative 1. So they were flipped, and the Y is now negative. C and C prime, 2 and 2, and the Y is negative. D, 4, negative 2. So they were flipped, and then this value is now negative. Same with E, they were flipped, and this one's now negative. Same with F, they were flipped, and this one's now negative. So that is what we were talking about today in class. Our pre-image is XY. After a rotation of 90 degrees clockwise, what happened here? All the Y values came to the front. and all of the x values went to the back and changed signs. And that is where we got this notation from, okay? That's rotating something 90 degrees clockwise. Now, the same as 90 degrees clockwise is 270 degrees counterclockwise. Those are the same thing. So, now let's look at rotating 180 degrees. So, if we had a circle, 90 degrees would be right here, 180 degrees would be right here, 270, and then back to 360. So when I go 90 degrees, I'm only doing one turn. When I go 180 degrees, I'm going to turn my paper twice. So here's my paper, it's facing normal, and I'm going to turn my paper once, I'm going to turn my paper twice. Okay? Turned my paper once, turned my paper twice. And now I'm going to write the coordinates for our new image. So what we just did was rotate the image. This is our image, and our pre-image is this, right? Our pre-image is this. And after we rotate it, if our pre-image was still here, this is exactly where our image would be. So we are going to take the coordinates from here and then draw it back right here. Okay? So again, I'm going to rotate my paper 2 times. 1, 2. 1, 2. And now I'm going to write the coordinates of this based on its location to 0. So A prime, it moved to the left from 0. So it went over -1 to the left. So that's -1 for my x value. It went down 1. So that would be -1. So let's look at B. It went to the left 1. So that's -1. And it's down 2. So -2. C prime is over to the left 2, down 2. So -2, -2. My D value, my D prime, is over to the left 2 and down 4. So -2, -4. My E prime value is over -3 and down -4. My F prime value is over to the left 3, so -3, and down 1, so -1. Now that I have all of my prime points, I'm going to rotate my paper back to its normal position, and now I'm going to graph these coordinates. So A prime is at -1, -1. A prime. B prime is at -1, -2. C prime is at -2, -2. D prime is at -2, -4. E prime, -3, -4. F prime, -3, -1. And now I'm going to connect the dots. And notice I have the same shape. It has just been rotated 180 degrees. It's moved 2 quadrants. Moved 2 quadrants. So let's look again and let's compare our values from our pre-image to our image. What do we notice? Our pre-image for A was 1, 1. After the rotation, A prime is now at -1, -1. So it's the same numbers, but they're both negative. So B and B prime, again, it's the same numbers, 1 and 2, but they're both negative. E, 3 and 4, 3 and 4, but they're both negative. And if we look back here, Our pre-image is in our first quadrant, where our x values are positive, where our y values are positive. And we know that when we rotate something 180 degrees, it goes into the quadrant diagonal from the pre-image. And in this quadrant, our x values are negative and our y values are negative. So that is where we got the notation that after a rotation of 180 degrees, our x values change to all being negative and our y values change. Now when I say negative, I mean that they change signs. We talked about this a little bit in class. This y value right here could be -3, right? It could be -3. And then it would change to a -3, making it a positive. Okay? So that negative sign doesn't mean exactly that it's negative. It just means that the sign has changed. So now we're going to look at rotating our pre-image 270 degrees clockwise. 270 degrees clockwise. So we are going to do 3 turns. 1 turn's 90. 2 turns is 180. 3 turns is 270. So I'm going to take my paper and I'm going to turn it 3 times to the right because we're turning clockwise. So 1, 2, 3. And again, I'm looking at my pre-image in comparison to 0. So, from 0, point A prime, is 1 unit to the left, so -1, and 1 unit up, +1. B prime is located 2 units to the left, so -2, and 1 unit up. C prime, -2 up 2, D prime, -4, because it's 4 left from 0, up 2. We're not looking at the numbers anymore. We're just counting the distance from 0. E prime is 1, 2, 3, 4 units left, so -4, and 3 units up, so +3. F prime is 1 unit to the left, so -1, and 3 units up, so +3. Okay, so I'm going to turn my paper back to normal, and now I'm going to graph my new ordered pairs. So I'm going to start with A prime. It's located at -1, 1. So -1, 1. I'll use a different color now. -1, 1 is A prime. So now let's look at B, -2, 1. So -2, 1. B prime. C prime, -2, 2. D prime, -4, 2. E prime, -4, 3. And F prime, -1, 3. Okay? Now I'm going to connect my dots. And there you have it. Our pre-image was rotated 90 degrees clockwise, 180 degrees, and then 270 degrees clockwise. Had I said 90 degrees counterclockwise, we know that's the same as 270 degrees clockwise, so it's the same image. What would have been different is that instead of rotating my paper to the right, I would have rotated my paper to the left. Then I would have written down the coordinates and then plotted them just like I did here, okay? So, let me know if you have any questions. And again, if we look back at that clockwise for 270 degrees, you're going to notice the same thing has occurred as the rule that we studied in class. So B to B prime, what happened? They flipped, and the first value is now the opposite sign. What about D? They flipped, and the first one is now opposite. Same thing here. They flipped for E prime, and the first one is the opposite sign. And same thing for F. They flipped, and the first one has the opposite sign. So that is where we get our rule from. Our pre-image XY, after the transformation, our Y value is first, and it has the opposite sign, and our X value went to the back. So here, our X value went to the back, my Y value went to the front and changed signs. We will do more practice with this on Monday. I hope this makes a little bit more sense.